Hi, everyone, and welcome to our pre-Christmas webinar. This one's a little near and dear to my heart. I've been working with public university primarily, and K through 12 clients, faculty and staff for almost a couple decades now. And so this is my first ability to put the knowledge out there for a lot of people to be able to hear rather than the one-to-one explanations and education and implementation that we do for a lot of our clients. So thanks for joining us. The intro hopefully has allowed a couple people that may have been a little bit behind to be able to get in. We appreciate you being here, spending a little pre-Christmas time with us. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and dive right in, right on time. So today we're talking, as I mentioned, about university retirement, looking at a lot of the public pensions around the country and the defined contribution alternatives, supplemental retirement plans, etc. And there'll be a little bit of a focus on the Ohio plans since those are by far the vast majority that I work with, but we do work with clients in Michigan and Texas and California and Florida and North Carolina, lots of different states. And so while they're not the ones that we're doing lots of times a year, we're pretty proficient at it. Have multiple different softwares to help our clients make sure that they're getting the optimal implementation for themselves per the kind of what their goals and objectives and risk tolerance and what they want to do with their life. And I'll show you what some of those case studies look like as well. So just so you kind of know, can follow along with what we're doing. You can see here, first of all, I just want you to get a broad understanding of these retirement plans. You know, what is the difference between public employee and a defined benefit pension versus how most of the privatized system is with 401ks, and what so that ironically I find even public employees tend to understand better than their own until they've had somebody explain it to them maybe a few times. Then what are the kind of the differences between states and pensions, and we'll talk about these defined contribution alternatives to the pensions, ARP and ORP, and then what are some of the key takeaways of those, and then looking at strengths and weaknesses and Social Security, things like the windfall elimination provision, government pension offset, and then also just doing a bunch of case studies so you can kind of see the difference of what it means to participate in these things and to use them right, and if you elected one over another, etc. What the options are for getting professional help at your university or school, and then we'll hit briefly at the end on some of the other additional planning strategies that you may be able to use. And then coming up in February, we're going to have a follow-up to this one that is focusing the entire presentation just on advanced strategies and how to do some of them, or at least give you ideas to find someone to help you do them. So let's drive forward. So when we really get into this, there's a big difference between kind of two things: defined benefit plans and defined contribution plans. So when you look at defined benefit plans, there's going to be things like your state teachers retirement, or your public employees, or teachers retirement like TRS in Texas, or OPERS, Ohio Public Employee Retirement System, PLOP, Social Security. These are all defined benefit. And what that means is that they're defined by some sort of formula, usually, that of what you get in the end. They're defined by the benefits that you get in the end, not how much money goes into them, okay? And so that's why you'll hear a lot of times what hits the news a lot is like how unfunded is a pension in a certain state for the benefits it promised versus the money that it's collected and how much it was able to grow it into. And then you'll see a wide variety of different funded pensions across the country, public and private. So there are absolutely private defined benefit plans, but that is one of the things that has changed significantly over the decades. Is that it used to be the main thing, and then of course 401ks came around, and most private or publicly traded companies ended up scratching their pensions and switching over to 401k defined contribution type system. Okay, so when we look at defined contribution, I just kind of we have the header up here when we're looking at the alternative retirement plans, and that's kind of what they named them for, is like an alternative to those defined benefit or pension plans. And so they are kind of the opposite. They are defined by what you put in and what you grow the money into. There's no guarantee or formula for what you get in the end. It is about how you personally did investing those monies. Now, some plans may be controlled by the owner or the plan sponsor or what so they don't let you pick the funds or what so. But most of them today, they do allow you to. So it does tend to be very individualized. So you can see here, most contribution amounts on what we're talking about when we talk about the high level defined contribution are kind of set either by the plan document or by legislation if it's an alternative to a pension. We'll get into that. The supplemental retirement plans, like your 401ks and 403bs, deferred comp, I'm going to show you. I'm going to try to draw it out. We'll see how successful I am, what that differences look like. Those ones you get to choose how much you want to put into them. And those are the ones that you'll come across lots of times, and they'll say, you know, what the contribution amounts for 2024 or 25 are this. And then, of course, there are investment options in there, which are generally chosen by your plan sponsor, which is almost always your employer, picks what funds are actually in there. And that is kind of one of the downsides of the last, I'd almost say 2 decades and gotten progressively worse, is that, of course, our society is litigious. And so employers have changed a lot of their plans to take out a lot of the investment options, to almost dumb them down to reduce their fiduciary, their liability to you by trying to take away the tools that you could use to help yourself, but you could also use to hurt yourself. And so they have dumbed down the investment options a lot for those that either know what they're doing or hire someone like us that knows what they're doing, to not have a lot of the different eggs to put your your eggs in different baskets as we make you an asset allocation. And so, as I mentioned, DC plans are not guaranteed. So it depends on the performance. And so you transfer a lot of the risk over to yourself rather than whoever the sponsor is of the plan. But that goes both ways, right? There's upside potential as well, too. And that almost gets back to, over the years, you've heard the politicians argue over privatized Social Security. And of course, that is that old argument right there. And portable, that is one of the nice things about these. Instead of having to leave it there until you're 55 or 60 or whatever the retirement age is, and then just getting a guaranteed income from that, you have the ability to roll these over into your individual retirement account or into your current new 401k or whatever the case. Now, again, that has a downside, double-edged sword. Too many people, when they do this rollover, end up taking it prematurely, which is unfortunate because a lot of times they couldn't have done that with their other retirements. And too many people sacrifice their future for the now and pay tax penalties, etc. And then most of these are tax advantage. So the government's kind of given up some of their tax benefits to encourage and help you save for retirement. And so the ones that are, mandated by the employer, they're almost always pre-tax. And the ones that you get to choose whether you do pre-tax or Roth, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So that's really, the characteristics there, between the defined benefit pension plans and the defined contribution, like investment retirement accounts where you invest in them. So let's dig into this. Let me do some drawing. I told AI to make me drawing this for you, and of course, it makes me look way cooler than I probably really am. So let's switch over to here and let's make sure that this works. Okay, so I started to give myself a head start here, but let's start to draw, okay? And so when we look at the private retirement system, okay, then, you're going to have your main thing, which is going to be Social Security, okay? So for most people, they have their Social Security, and that is their primary retirement. Every once in a while, you will still have the private employers, and it's almost a hybrid between primary and supplemental, but I would still call it a supplemental. You're not going to have it a ton of time. Let's just go ahead and draw me a bunch of these little things here so we can save some time. Uh-oh, I guess we'll do it here. Okay. you're going to have a private pension, okay? If they have it. It's not very often. It's probably less than, 10% of employers now. So the main thing here is going to be the 401k, okay? And every once in a while, I'm going to throw it down here. Every once in a while, you'll have something called non-qualified deferred compensation. I'm just going to put that in QDC just because I don't think I can fit it in there. Okay, so this is not necessarily a retirement plan because it doesn't get tax incentives and it's beyond the scope of this. Maybe we'll put it in the advanced one. But for most people, they're just going to have Social Security and 401k. That's what the system has turned into. Okay, and so these things, you don't see them as often, but they can be there. Okay, so these two things, Social Security is primary retirement, 401k is the supplemental. You get to choose. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to sign up for this. And then you do have on the side that you can do a traditional, again, I'm going to have to abbreviate a little bit, and you can do a Roth IRA. So it just stands for individual retirement account. So you can set these up, you can contribute to them if your income's below a certain amount, and then you just decide in this, and by choosing either one of these, whether you want to have a tax deduction and pay the government later, or on the Roth side, you want to take your after-tax dollars and save them, and then get to grow at 100% tax-free. Okay, so that is the first private system, just so you understand it. Most people understand it. They got Social Security, they're in it. They put in 6.2, the employer puts in 6.2%, and then for most people, they put in some percentage of their pay. I think the national average is somewhere only around 4 or so percent, but a lot of people will put in 5 or 6, and their employer will match up to 3, so they're getting in maybe an extra 6 or 7% when we kind of look at the averages on top of the 6% that's going to Social Security. And then usually later on in life, unless you've had some parents nudge you or you were just super savvy and on the ball, you take some of your extra money, your tax return, and put it into the Roth and get some extra retirement savings going and get some of these tax preferences that the government gives you to help you save. So looking at the public university system, then it's going to be a little bit different, but it's under the same type of, high level thing, right? So let's go ahead and let me draw a bunch of arrows here. Okay. And let's do, you still have it. Everybody can do IRAs and Roth IRAs unless you make too much, okay? So let's write some stuff in here. And so your primary retirement is going to be, pension. So it could be like state teachers retirement system, or STRS, or OPERS, etc. Okay. And then down here on the supplemental, you're gonna have full 3B. So full 3B, especially in K through 12, a lot of some places will call this tax sheltered annuity, like TSA, because traditionally, especially in the K through 12, a lot of full 3B were just annuities. So that's all you had. Now you get to choose whether you wanted to do like FOIA or VALIC or AXA back in the day. It used to be ING, etc. But full 3B. Full 3B basically is a 401k for nonprofits. Probably the main distinguisher is you can't have company stock in it like a 401k, okay? Because it's public entity, right? It's not a publicly traded company. It doesn't have stock. And then the extra thing that some public employees have are called 457 type B, which is also qualified deferred compensation. So this one really is a retirement plan that the government's given the tax breaks and not the company. And so generally, if you work for the municipality or the state, then you have deferred compensation. Okay, so if you're a police officer, all you have is your, say it's OPERS LE, that would be like law enforcement here. You'd have your OPERS and you'd have deferred comp. Okay, that's what a lot of people call it, just a shorthand. They call it deferred comp. Okay. Now, if you work for a nonprofit, say you work for like Children's Hospital or something like that, then you would have a full 3B, okay? And they generally will work with Social Security, okay? But if you work for a public university or a public K through 12, then you have both. And these things don't stack, so you're allowed to max both of them out, okay? And have a little bit different rules. Again, I'm not going to try to get into too much detail because we could go on for a long time. I don't want to bore the life out of you. I know for certain people that may want that detail, follow up with us, or another good advisor that's been working with public employees for a long time, and they'll help you get a lot of the details. And you can DIY research it. I mean, it's amazing how much information's out there. But with the full 3B, generally, it's going to work well for a lot of people because after you hit 59 and a half, you can take it out without any tax penalties. It doesn't matter if you're working or not. I said, all right, we gave you a tax break to save for retirement. You went to retirement age. Now you're allowed to take it out. Okay. And so that works well for most people. With deferred comp, there are no tax penalties. The thing is, as long as you're still working, with a couple of exceptions, no matter how old you are, you can't take it out until you're separated from service. Okay. So where this works well, why it is like this for a lot of public employees, especially police officers and firefighters, is they retire early, right? And so if they were to retire at 54 or what's so, because they have a higher mortality job, right? It makes sense that they can retire earlier if they make it all the way through, right? Then they shouldn't be tax penalized, right? And so it's a little bit harsher on taking it out if you're going to stay at the same employer. But if you're going to retire early, it is a little bit better. Okay, and there's some nuances, and we'll hit this in the next webinar where you can use these, where maybe you're saving in both of them. And like say you're a resident doctor at a hospital and you want to put some extra money in here that you take out early to start a practice when your income's going to be really low, and you save in your full 3B for your actual supplement, like long-term retirement. So anyways, it's different for different people, but I just want you to understand the general setup is you're going to have your pension. And for most people that we work with when we're talking about university and K through 12, they got a pension and they got a full 3B. And then if they fill up to the max of the full 3B, they start flowing over into the deferred comp. And sometimes it can be reversed, but that is how we see it most of the time. And so then over here, we're still going to have our individual, which we're going to have our traditional IRA or pre-tax and your Roth IRA. But another thing that you have over here is you can have an alternative to pension in the states that have done it, okay? And so this is where we start talking about like those ARP, ORP type things, okay? And so in some states, go ahead and draw our line here, boom, boom, and then individually go over here, but this is separate from the employer, okay? So you can opt out of this and opt into this. It effectively turns your defined benefit into a defined contribution, which is why they call it the alternative retirement plan or optional retirement program. There's different names, but I can't remember. There's like 14 or so around the country or so where you can do that, okay? And so you have this or this and one or both of these, and that is your setup. But really, I mean, still, you think about these things as substitutes to Social Security, substitute for 401k. There are a little bit different rules in what's so, but still, it's kind of the same system when you think about it in terms of how it's organized. So hopefully it gives you a little bit better idea. This is going to get set up for you automatically. You can elect out of it to go into here. Usually it's pretty strict. You got like 90, 120 days, something like that. If you don't elect, you're automatically going to go in the defined benefit. And then usually you have to elect because usually the employers put in a good amount, anywhere from 8 to 14% into these pensions. And so they generally don't match on the 403B and the 457 like they do on the 401ks because they put in much less to Social Security, so they're up in a little bit of the match into the 401k, right? So hopefully that helps you understand. And let's drive on. And actually, let's go ahead and do poll number 1. Let's throw it up there. Let you weigh in a little bit on what you think. So I'll give you a couple minutes to throw those in there. All right. I think we had a little bit of a delay there, but let you vote. Everybody vote, vote, vote. So it looks like most people are saying I've been meaning to or no. So more than likely, you're probably thinking about that question like, have you set up like a full 3B or deferred comp or what so, which that's understandable. I can't even tell you how many people I've met with over the last 20 years, and they don't have that. They're like, what do you mean? I've already got my retirement. I'm in my public employee retirement system, or I'm in the state teachers. And I'm like, no. Did you do the one that you can opt in for, that you can save more, get tax preferences, and most people want in detail? Okay, so thanks for sharing. Let's keep moving on. And so the next thing is, how do these things work? Because a lot of these pensions and they're not in a lot of states outside of Social Security, okay? And so there are these things that have been instituted over time that kind of make up for the fact that Social Security is a safety net. And so in many situations, it pays out or can pay out a good bit more than what the contributions and the growth of that could be. So those situations, a lot of times, are where people don't have as much time in Social Security, and then they end up spending a medium or a lot of time in what's called a non-covered pension. And that is the kind of the technical IRS Social Security kind of name for that. Non-covered means that when you're in that, your employer and you are contributing everything into the pension, and they don't have to, and you don't have to contribute to Social Security. That being the case, they made these two things called the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset to kind of handicap Social Security a little bit for people that were going to have bigger benefits from state pensions. Now, I can't tell you how long I've been doing this. This makes people mad. And actually, there's a bill going through Congress right now. I heard it's probably going to pass that is going to take these away. Now, we'll see if that stands. I mean, Social Security is already underfunded. And so I've always been skeptical that they'll make this go away permanently, just because it's difficult to make Social Security more expensive. But there is a lot of anger about this, even though really probably actuarially it's right in terms of if we are going to have a sustainable system. Regardless, I'm going to tell you about it, because even if they do this, it could get vetoed or it could end up getting repealed. So you should still understand it. Because it wasn't put in place for no reason. It wasn't meant to be an unfair thing, okay? So the windfall elimination provision, basically for someone that works for a non-covered employer or a pension, if they don't have their full Social Security earning years in, so get them more than 30 years inside of there, then it's going to reduce their Social Security. And the maximum reduction is about $400 and some per month, right? So if your benefit was going to be about $1,600 and you had 10 years in Social Security and you had 30 years or 25 years in the teacher's retirement, then you might only get $1,200 a month from Social Security. So that is, how that works. Government pension offset kind of goes the opposite side of things. So it says if you get spousal benefits, okay, then whatever your pension is gets times by 2/3 basically, and then whatever that number is minuses off of the spouse's benefits that you were entitled to. And so once they made that calculation, then they'll say, do you still stay on your own WEP, or do you stay on your government pension offset spousal widow benefits, etc. Okay, and so the government pension offset can be a lot harsher, especially if your spouse has a big Social Security, because it can knock out a lot of the increase inside of there. But what I find from doing this for a long time is the person that's got the pension is generally a lot higher than it would have been under Social Security, or a decent amount, maybe not a ton higher. But it does kind of make up for that. It still makes people mad. That happens, and I want you to understand it. Sounds like it may go away, at least for a while. But still, we should know that it was there for a long time. It had a good reason to be there. And even if it goes away, it could absolutely come back, okay, or something like it, okay? And here you can kind of see, this kind of shows you two things. So first, it will show you who's not covered by Social Security. You can see our Ohio is one of those states, but I work with a lot of people from Michigan, and they have their pension and they have Social Security together. If you're a federal employee right now, then you have FERS and Social Security, and they work together. And generally, those defined benefits, the formulas for them are not as high because they know you're going to get Social Security, and they had to pay into that as well too, versus some of these other states with non-covered pensions, their benefits will be higher because they didn't pay into Social Security, and that's your only retirement there. Okay, so you can kind of see that the red ones are the ones where you're going to have that status, and the light blue ones are the ones where they work together with Social Security. Just, kind of an FYI there. And it makes sense. I've had a lot, especially faculty more than staff. I've had a lot of people change different universities, pre-tenure to tenure track. To even later taking a promotion or getting some grant funding and moving. And so you may have some mobility, and it just doesn't work just one way. You got to know kind of how it works across the board. So we're going to look at some case studies now and really kind of drill into a little bit. First of all, what's a traditional example look like? What's a traditional example look like if you actually saved in your supplemental plans decently to well? What does it look like in a defined benefit scenario, and then using your supplemental plans? And then what's it look like in an ARP, ORP type scenario, defined contribution, and then using your supplemental plans? Okay, and then we can look at mixed family as well too. Okay, so let's look at the first one. And I know this is small, I apologize. I will try to, I try to put in here, this is just some of our software of how we will run things we can run all kinds of different permutations of however you want to claim it. There are so many different ways to claim Social Security in your pensions, etc. But this one kind of solved for them to where the wife had a non-covered pension and the husband had full earning years of Social Security. And so basically, in solving for them, it said, all right, if the husband lives to 95 and the wife lives to 100, then the optimal solution is to defer until 70. Okay, and so it's a close thing. If we knock it down till 85 and 90, then it will want the wife to claim early and the husband to defer to 70. It's close though. You could do full retirement age at 67 too. You can see in this scenario that where this line crosses over is the break even. So at 70, together, they get about $4,500 per month. At 62, if they take it early, they only get $2,500 per month. So that's a huge difference there, right? It takes 25 years to break even though. That's a lot of time. A lot of people say, well, I'll be 87 by that point, and so I don't even know that I'll live that long. But there are other things besides just these dollar amounts that you got to consider in terms of which one you choose. I'm just showing you here kind of what the difference is. If we took out all the other variables, pretty much it takes about 25 years to break even. And the other thing is between 62 and 67, unless you're making not very much, you can't work. Or you could get penalized and they'll take back a good portion of that Social Security, okay? So you got to be careful, not only that you want to retire at 62, that you're pretty confident you're not going back to work. There are some things you could do if you have non-retirement money. Say you get 64 and you're just like, I had this great opportunity. You could pay them back all the money that they paid you and reset. But again, there's not a ton of people that just have the ability to just pay all that back. I'd say the vast majority of people that I've seen elected 62 that didn't do it for mortality or like health reasons were people, they needed it. They had to retire for whatever reason. They really needed to. And without that extra payment from the government, they weren't going to make it, right? And so sometimes it's not really a choice per se when you're forced like that. Okay, so that's tough though. I mean, this is a couple that if they didn't save anything in their 401k or 403b or in an IRA or Roth IRA or whatever, you only got, let's say you work a long time, you only got $4,500 a month. Okay, this is in this example together they were making about $130,000. Okay, now of course you don't have to save for retirement, and hopefully you paid off some things by then. But that's pretty substantial cut. I mean, it's less than 50%. It's hard to make it. That's why a lot of people retired are living paycheck to paycheck. The average person, I think over 55, only has $40,000 or $50,000 in savings. So this is not a stretch. You have something bad happen to your house or your car that insurance doesn't cover, and that's gone, and this is all you got left, right? So let's look at the next one, which I just about moved on to. And this one just says, okay, let's say John, since he's the one that's in the private, right? He's saved for 25 years, and he saved 10%. That's pretty high compared to what the average American's doing. But still, I'm a big proponent, have been. I don't care. Right out of college, you should be saving 15% into your retirement. You should absolutely do it. It gives you all kinds of options. And every once in a while, if you have times where you have to turn down, whatever. So 10%, he's saving 10% of his salary, and his company matches 3%. Pretty typical. This is something that absolutely would happen. And so if he did that, assuming that he made $65,000 and had inflation over time, after costs, I assume that maybe his 401k and et cetera had about 1% worth of fees, that he'll net out about $829,000 and some change. Okay. Now this is just an account with money in it, and so people are like, oh my God, almost $1 million. And again, when you're making income off of an account, it's a whole lot less money than if you just won $800,000 in the lottery and you need to spend it. Okay. So you got to be careful. You generally don't want to withdraw more than 4 or 5%. And here I kind of put 5%. So basically, you'd have another $3,400, $3,500 a month to add on to that $4,500. And so now we're talking $8,000 a month. So if you have one primary breadwinner, and maybe the other spouse took care of the kids and occasionally went to work and not quite as much, or had a disposable income to save as much, and Social Security was going to be small, like we had in there. This is typical. If we got one saving for both, and one with a bigger Social Security earning history, but now you're pushing towards almost 100,000. So after you take off, the actual 16% going into retirement. And also maybe the health insurance stuff goes down because Medicare is cheaper than their health plan now, then maybe you're pretty close. Maybe you're only having a 10% cutback in income, and if you paid some of your stuff off, it works, right? And Social Security traditionally has had a very good inflation adjustment, or good inflation protection. Hopefully politicians will keep their hands off. We'll see. So case study 2. So again, I apologize, these are small, but I'll try to tell you everything here. So now we're kind of looking at the teacher spouse, or maybe she's the admin in the office or what's out. But again, I'm keeping it plain vanilla simple, saying that she's 65,000 right now, is about 56, going to retire at 65. And so I used STRS here. And so it's saying, all right, if we did that, then this is what the final average salary would be. This is how many years of service she ends up with. And so that ends up with a straight life annuity, or guaranteed payment just for her of $53,700 almost. Okay. Now you'll see with a lot of these pensions, you get to choose different things. Okay. And so you could say, I just want it for me, and if I die, my spouse gets nothing. That doesn't happen very often, at least if people will really think about it, because these are big payments for families, and sometimes these people can be the bigger bread earners. And so I apologize, I had to run this from home, so if you hear my dogs barking, they take care of the farm, so they can get riled up. So one of the main ones that people will choose, and there are all kinds of different ones, we help our clients go through this, but I can't make this too long, is with survivorship. And so you can see in this instance, if we take a reduction of about $360 per month, then if something happens to spouse number 2, spouse number 1 continues to get the same payment. And this one's called with reversion. And so with reversion means if the spouse was to die first, then it goes back up to what the bigger payment would have been. Okay, so it goes a little more depth, but again, you've got all these different options. We help our clients look at the different permutations and what's going to be the best for them. Okay. So you look at that, the straight life annuity at 65, is almost $4,500 per month with 100% survivorship, about $4,115. Okay, so that's a pretty good pension, right? Let's push on. Now let's say that she does the same thing and saves in her 403B. She puts in 10% of her salary, but the company or the employer, the school, matches nothing because they already put more into Social Security than, they put more into STRS than they would have into Social Security, so there's no match. Okay, so she would accumulate a little less, be about $637,776. Okay, so if she withdrew at 5% per year, then she would have 2,657. I don't know why that 4 is there. So just pay attention to these 4 numbers to add to the income. So then she would be up to about 6,772. And that's great because actually when I did this first one over here, the 4,500 contains both of their Social Securities. Okay, now his, granted, was like 35 some of it, but hers is still almost 1,000 after we take out the windfall elimination provision. Okay, so if we added 1,000 back onto here for her part of it, she's actually higher than him with the STRS and the 403B. But it's pretty close, right? It's comparable in terms of how you're looking at this, which is surprising for a lot of people that these systems are matching up. But it makes sense. It makes sense. Okay, so let's look at case study 3. This is that, hey, what if we put them together, right? They're married, and let's say they both worked hard, full careers their whole life. She was a teacher, and he worked for Procter & Gamble, whatever. And they did those things together. They have together about $11,262 a month. That gives them 100% income replacement. That's terrific. Because now they don't have to save, about 15 to 20% of their income, and they're still making what they're doing. So when they retire, they're almost getting a raise. Now, again, a lot of people in this situation, they come to us early, and ironically, they're afraid they're going to run out of money. But when we show them this, they might say, oh, well, can we retire earlier? Or wait, maybe we want to buy a condo down in Florida. So it is interesting how half the people that come to us for retirement planning that are scared about running out of money and how do we do this end up finding out that they have options and there are different variables they can choose. Now, some people just choose to have the strength, and that's financial security, right? But it's interesting to see if we just combine it together, what happens. So now we're going to switch over and look at ARP. Okay, and so again, I'm kind of using the Ohio example. We do call it ARP here versus some of the other examples in other states. And so we're going to take Jane. Now again, ARP has been around here since 1998, and so it doesn't even have 34.5 years. But let's just go with this. And you can see here, I just used the formula. It comes out about to exactly what we had calculated before. But what we're looking at here is just saying, if the money minus, because the pension still takes a small cut and applies it towards the people that are in the defined benefit, because they say in certain states that since the pensions are unfunded, you just can't elect out because every public employee owns a little bit of that debt. And so they'll take a little bit. So I took the net that goes in here from the employer and the employee, and said, if they saved it for this long, how much would it grow to if they only made 4% per year? So it will grow into about 1.17 million. Okay, and I did 2 examples. So 4% would be really safe withdrawal rate. 6% could be risky. You could run out if you're unlucky. Okay, but just to kind of see where you could be, depending on how you wanted to push the pedal to the metal and how you thought about your mortality, your chances. And you can see if you only made 4%, which is a little bit below the average investor rate of return in the last 25 to 30 years, then if you only you only make 4, you only withdraw 4, so kind of crappy return, and you're being conservative on your withdrawals, you withdraw about $39.01 per month. Okay, so that's pretty close, right? If you wanted to push it a little bit or annuitize it, give it to an insurance company and take a guarantee from them, kind of on the private side versus letting the public pension do it, then you can make upwards of 5,851. Okay. Now, so again, that's kind of if you don't do well. Now we want to go look at the next step up. Say you make 6% per year. and you withdraw 4%, that's going to grow to, you know, 1,758,000. And so 4% off of that would be about 5,860. If you were to take 6%, it'd be almost 8,800. If we said you grew at 8% per year, you're seeing what this compounding is doing. A little bit of extra interest makes a huge difference. Now it's going to grow at almost 2.7 million, which could be about 9,000 to 13,500 per month. Now let's just say you were an excellent investor. You had a high risk tolerance. You kept it aggressive. It could grow all the way up to 4.2 million, and you'd be at 14 to 21,000. This is fairly atypical. Okay, I know people will say, "Wow, the S&P's done better than that the last 10 to 20 years," and say, "True, but the average investor has not." There's a difference between ideal and average returns. So this is possible, and some people do get this, but they are the exception to the rule. So nobody should really be hinging their plans on 10% rate of returns. Okay, you're probably going to be somewhere in between here, depending on what you do. And a lot of the underperformance comes from investors, comes from behavioral biases and heuristics, and everybody says they won't do that. And then the vast majority of people do. Okay, so you can see this huge range of outcomes. So almost, you know, below what the pension is to 5 times what the pension is. Okay, and so key takeaway on just looking at this is that longer time frames, when you have that compounding power of interest, are DC plans superpower. If you save early, you save well, and you invest wisely and well, you are going to crush a DB plan. Okay, but you have a much wider range of outcomes. So in the statistics, that's going to be your standard deviation. A lot of people would call that risk, right? Market risk. Okay, and so that's a huge range of outcomes. So it could hurt you all the way up to really handsomely reward you. Okay, so I want to be fair. I want to show you the same case study, but I'm only going to show you 12 years. So say this person already did 23 years on Social Security and was only going to do 12 years in the system. Now, if we look at this and calculate that benefit out still at, you know, around 65, they would get about $1,430 per month from the pension. And if we look over here, what that would accumulate to just over the 12 years at the different rate of returns, your range of outcomes goes from 817 to 1744. And so not until you're really depending on higher rate of return and higher withdrawal rates are you going to come to parity on this. Okay, so you really got to push the pedal to the metal to beat it up. So the compounding power of the interest going on the interest of the interest really is powerful over longer periods of time. Now, again, to be fair, the ARP or the defined contribution is not the same thing as the pension. And let me explain that to you. When you go at 65 and go to STRS or TRS or OPERS and you elect, let's just say that 100% survivorship with reversion, once you start getting paid that, if you die the next year, both you and your spouse get hit in a car, it's gone. It's gone. Nobody gets anything else. You paid for somebody else to live to 105. That's kind of the insurance nature of pensions and if you annuitize guaranteed income. When you have this, yes, you're going to probably do the same thing and make income out of it, but this pot of money is yours. If you take out $10,000 and didn't have any growth and there's $265 left and you get in a car wreck, your family's getting the rest of that money. Okay, so they're not the same thing because this pot of money is yours, but so is all of the risk and the reward and the responsibility and the planning, etc. Okay, so key takeaways: the pension is much stronger in this scenario. We talked about the range of outcomes, and the shorter the time period, if you're older, okay, you're closer, say you're doing your last few years in the pension, it's really tough to just flat out beat this pension. Okay, all right, let's move on. So I just took what if John and Jane were married, put them together with the ARP. And so, okay, so there's John's part of Social Security. His money that he can make off of withdrawing from his 403B comes out to a little over $7,000 a month. Jane, She's got her $929 a month in Social Security after the reduction for the WEP. They pass that legislation, take it away, it'd be a little bit higher, pushing towards $1,400. Her ARP is going to be almost $8,800. So I did a 6% rate of return, not using the high one, with the 6% withdrawal rate, which is a little bit more analogous to, you know, if you annuitized it and did the pension. And then she gets her $2,657 from still putting her 10% in her 403b. So $12,376 per month. So together in this scenario, they'd have $19,000 some per month. So that's a lot more than they were making before they retired. So in this scenario, they absolutely could retire early. But again, remember how I told you those range of outcomes. You have a 2008 right before you're about ready to retire, and you're super DC besides the Social Security, you're going to be too scared to retire. Again, so there's some peace of mind with some of the guarantees, but you can absolutely see the upside here, okay? And the upside on, you know, this is that there's money left over in case of premature death, or if you invest wisely and are lucky with your sequence of returns and what the markets do. It doesn't matter how old you die, there could be a lot left over. But there's greater risk in the market risk, like how much the markets, your investments go up and down. Your sequence of return risk is higher. Okay, so depending whether you retire at the beginning of the 90s and the tech boom, or you retire at, you know, 2008, even though your retirement may last 30 or 35 years, and in both of those examples, both have a 7.5% rate of return. In the 2008 scenario, you have a much higher chance of running out of money. Retiring right before the beginning of the 90s, you have a much higher chance of ending up with a lot of money at the end with that same 7.5% rate of return. And that is what's called sequence of returns. So even if you have the same average rate of returns, how they get delivered to you by what happens in history, your history in retirement, makes a big difference, and it is a risk. And then human behavioral risk, because you can mess this up and invest it horribly, or make a bad decision to get out of the market at the bottom of 2008, 2009. Those things happen a lot more than people would like to admit. But there's less risk in these categories. And I put an asterisk because you can do things with how you organize your portfolio that are not wise, that are not smart, that does not give you the less risk. But if you put your eggs in different baskets and rebalance and buy low and sell high, blah, 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 then it generally, in most scenarios throughout the last 100 years, would reduce your inflation risk and your longevity risk, meaning that it is going to be a better protection against inflation. Because, I mean, even if you look at STRS right now, they're not even giving any COLA. They haven't for multiple years. And if you live a long time without that and there is inflation, you have a much higher chance of running out of money, unless you did like John and Jane here and saved, oh, I should say 401k, and they saved in their supplemental retirement plans. Okay. Okay. So key takeaways, understand at a high level your retirement system, that most people need to save in their supplemental retirement plans, and that electing your defined benefit versus DC is super important. I mean, it can be costly, and it usually is irrevocable, meaning you get this short time period to elect and then it's done. And most people are more worried about, and probably rightly so in the heat of the moment, learning their jobs, making sure that they're there on time, taking care of their families. That time passes by, it's gone. And then retirement planning is important, and you need to implement a successful retirement, income, and survivorship strategy. There's a lot that goes in here. I scratched the surface. I was showing the top of the iceberg there. So I'm going to skip the second poll just because I want to hit a few of these things before we're done. And it took me a little bit longer to go through all that than I had imagined. But the case studies are key. It helps you to practically understand some of these things. And I try to put it in a way that's unbiased and gives you both sides. But you still should talk to somebody and model out your individual circumstances, because there are all kinds of variations and permutations where there could be weird, unanticipated consequences. Okay. So when we say, hey, how can I get help? Right? Say, I don't really want to work with you guys. I want to work with somebody local in California, whatever. I'm going to kind of give you the layout here. Okay. So most private employer plans are just very DIY. They generally don't play well with advisors, except for the one advisor sometimes that set it up. If you're work for a big employer, a lot of times there are no people that work there. They just went straight to Vanguard or Fidelity or Hewitt, etc. There really is no help besides 1-800 number, and those are more admin people. They're not going to help you advice-wise at all. Okay, university and K through 12 are either DIY or commission-based. That is the vast majority of them. I mean, that's just kind of the nut got cracked. Is a bunch of reps from AXA and ING and AIG/Balic, Lincoln, etc. kind of got in, and that's why that name TSA kind of got ingrained in the tax sheltered annuity. And so it still exists that way, but there is the DIY side now, which is primarily spearheaded now by TIAA and Fidelity. Okay, so you can kind of go at it alone with TIAA or Fidelity, or generally most of these options have an advisor that come with them, but they tend to be pretty expensive. So usually somewhere between 1.25% to 3% per year in fees versus say TIAA and Fidelity that are usually under 0.5%, depending on how you organize or what so. And so then you could hire anyone. There are a lot of great advisors out there that just work for retainer, or you pay them, per quarter or per month, and you write a check. Or maybe you're lucky and well off and you have a lot of other investments besides what your employer sponsored investments are. You just pay them out of pocket. But for a lot of people, especially you did something like ARP or whatever the case, some of their biggest assets are locked up in the plan. And if you have to pay an advisor, because most advisors work on a percent of assets or net worth or something like a retainer based off of net worth, and most of the money's in there, and then you have to write a bigger check that you can't tap those funds for, it can be a burden. Okay. I'm a huge fan of this. If you are a person that is able to influence your HR or university or school system to allow third-party fee billing, it is a huge boon, great thing for those that want advice. Because what it does, it takes the DIY options and combines them with a fiduciary advisor like us. And they are allowed to deduct our fees for you and pay us out. And the effect that has for you is that those large assets can pay us, and it works if it's pre-tax, kind of like a tax deduction, right? Because it comes out pre-tax. You don't have to pay any taxes on it. It's like the government's helping to subsidize us helping you. And if you charge a fee like that versus a commission, then your advisor always has to be a fiduciary to you. It means they have to put your interests ahead of their own. So this is a great thing. It's unfortunate that less than 40% of universities and even fewer K through 12 that allow this, but this is the ideal system. It should probably be like that there's 1 to 2 providers that have bid, or they're competing in each other to keep the cost really low, and then those that feel confident to do it yourself or DIY get really good low cost options. And for the rest of everyone that needs help, that wants some specialization, etc., then they can hire someone to work on top of that low cost thing that have to look out for their best interests. And I put a little slide in here saying how tech is starting to fill the gap by using things that data aggregate or scrape using your credentials in a very secure type way. But still, it does not alleviate the out-of-pocket inefficiency or burden that can exist with people that have bigger plans. And generally, the closer you are to retirement, where you have the bigger amount of the plan, is when you want and need help the most as well. Additional planning strategies, going to slam through these. Correct asset allocation and rebalancing. So making sure that you have your eggs in different baskets wisely. I mean, it doesn't mean just pick a bunch of different funds, because these funds could be correlated, be doing the same thing. The whole point of putting eggs in different baskets is so that you've got different things in there that optimally go up and down at different times, depending on what's happening in the markets and economy environment. Optimal election of pre-tax versus Roth contributions. I see most people putting in pre-tax, and for the vast majority of Americans, that just doesn't make sense. They should be saving Roth. If you're at the very tail end of your career making a ton and then your income's going to go down, maybe that's still true. But again, you need to think about it. You need to model it out, do some research, make sure that's right for you. Coordinate spousal benefits. the vast majority of Americans out there, their spouses are just electing their own stuff. They're not coordinating and figuring out what goes together. And there are various strategies that work really well, you know, especially when you combine that 401k or 403b with deferred comp, HSA, which plan are you in? Maybe you elect 2 different health plans, and it's just not happening a lot of times because we're too busy. But that too busy is costing a lot. Use optimal funds in the plan or the brokerage link. So as I said, they've been dumbing them down over time. And so we got to make sure we get the right ones. And if they really have dumbed it down, in some cases, they're putting the ability to have a brokerage window. It's a little bit more hoops to jump through to open a second account. And then you have to scoop money into there. But then now maybe there's 10,000 options in there. And you have to, you know, kind of do something to waive the employer's, to a certain extent, liability for you. Consider after-tax contributions and Roth conversions. For a lot of people, depending on your circumstances, this could be a really good time income tax-wise. And the old assumption that you're just going to pay less taxes later with all the deficit spending and the debt, and how well you may have already saved pre-tax, may be a very wrong assumption. And use your health savings accounts. I like this. Start, max it, and then use investment options in there to grow it. It is like the best investment vehicle out, shelter. It's the best investment tax shelter out there. I mean, you get to put it in pre-tax. You get to grow it tax deferred, and then you get to take it out tax free. You can't beat it. You get all 3. So start, max, invest. Okay, let's keep going. We are close. Plug for us. I mean, check us out. We really love working with those that work for our kids and our communities. I've worked with public employees, teachers, faculty, professors, etc. for over 2 decades now. It's a huge part of our company still. We're good at it. We practice all the time. We care. Check out our reviews on our website, Rebel Financial. We do a lot more than just what the traditional advisors will do. We also do expanded wealth management to help our clients earn more in their cash, liability management and optimization. We do a lot of our clients' taxes. We do a lot more in-depth planning, looking at the future and different variations of the strategies you can pursue and what the consequences are to you now versus the future versus your heirs. And then we actually do a lot of business stuff too. So, you know, if you own a business or your spouse does, then that is great because we do consulting, coaching, we do the weak side evaluations, we do bookkeeping, payroll, can help with 401k, pensions, help employees, etc. And then this just tells you about what makes us different. Slide deck will be available for anybody that wants to check it out, but you can kind of see, I mean, we really kind of walk our talk. We believe it in terms of being a fiduciary to you, in terms of working for you and not Wall Street. We make a lot of things hard on ourselves to make a lot of them compete and against each other for you, lowering costs. We vote proxies to try to get publicly traded companies to do better. We're a B Corp, trying to do better for all stakeholders rather than just owners. And you can see some of these other things that we have. We love technology, but again, you don't have to use it, right? We're not going to force you, but we'll use it for you to help lower costs and do better, et cetera. And then those of you that like it, you will love a lot of the things we bring to the table, how fast we bring things. You're allowed to sign up for betas, et cetera. So it's pretty cool. There's the team right now. Advisors coming across here down to there. And then we got our financial planning, investment, operations, and administration, marketing, sales and marketing, technology, client service, and executive assistant to all your advisors as well too. So check us out. Hope to talk to you. I know we didn't get to do a lot of questions on this, so I may try to take one, but if I don't get to it, feel free to email it in, or if you put it into here, then it should come through, and I'll follow up with you afterwards and send you a reply. You don't have to set a meeting or anything. And of course, if you're watching this on demand in the future, submit your questions, and they will still absolutely be answered. So let me see where we're at here. Okay, so we'll do this. It says some pensions have credits for service. Can you give an example if you can transfer them between programs? And so this is absolutely the case. So Many pensions have this. They have their own rules for it. A lot of times you can see those online. More and more pensions are making great portals for like kind of intranet after you actually log in, where you can actually kind of run scenarios. Beyond that, I've worked with lots of different clients when they have these questions, and we actually get the pension involved, and they'll set meetings or virtual or in person, depends on how close you are to where they have an office, and they'll actually help you figure it out. So I see this a lot where we have someone that maybe, you know, had 5 years in Ohio pension, and then they're moving over to California and they want to purchase the years there. I've had that actually, California to Ohio out and vice versa. I'd say the most common one is federal time, and then being able to buy in into the state. And so again, generally once you see, all right, I'm maybe or probably am eligible for this, then you would call the pension, and if they needed to do a meeting with you, they would. If they're just like, oh, it sounds like you are, fill out this form, and then we're going to need this as proof from you, and then we will approve it or not. And then there's usually 2 types of approval depending on the type of service and time, etc. There's, okay, you are eligible for this service and we give it to you, not as likely. Or you are eligible for this time, here's how much it costs to buy it. And so their assumption is, oh, well, you cashed out of that one, or you took it and put it in an IRA, roll that over to us, and you can have these service credits. So you still may need to do a calculation to say, are the 2 years I'm going to buy worth the, let's just say they said $65,000 they went for it, or what? So, and if you say, oh, well, yeah, it is, my final average salary is going to be $120,000, so those 2 years to buy this, it only takes me like 4 years of being retired to break even off of that, and then I'm making money the rest of the time. Or it could be like, oh, I don't know, it's, you know, just like that Social Security, a 25-year break even, it may not be worth it. So again, sorry that's not simple, but that's the type of thing that you should think about. You should hear, because it's just not a no-brainer all the time, even though it does tend to be a decent deal in a lot of the ones that I have worked on. So there were a couple more questions. I'll reach out to you after. I want to be respectful of your time, especially pre-holidays. Hope you are already off. If you're not, getting off to go spend some time with your family for the holidays. Appreciate you joining us for this live webinar. Join us on February 26th when the Advanced University Planning Strategies is coming up. Follow on to this. And then, of course, we have our next one is going to be on, let's see, on 1/8. So on January 8th, you can check out our next one on accelerating taxes, understanding when paying more today saves you tomorrow. So thanks so much. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Happy Hanukkah. Hope to see you then, and let us know if there's anything we can do to help you anytime. Talk to you then. Bye-bye.